Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, the night sweats, the irritability, the brain fog, or waking around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere, despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to be working. You feel like you're putting in all this effort and all you're doing is moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now that you've gone through these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, so you can reach those health and fitness goals, live a life full of vitality, feel in control and at home in your body again, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I am tackling the 7 steps to lower inflammation and belly fat in menopause. I'm going to tackle what inflammation is. We're going to talk about what causes it to go up, how inflammation can affect your hormones and vice versa, of course, signs of inflammation to watch for, and of course, how to reduce inflammation. So it's very practical, okay? So number 1, what is inflammation? Okay, so inflammation is a protective reaction response to something going on in your body. Okay, so you can have acute inflammation and you can have chronic inflammation. So acute inflammation is your body's natural response to like an injury or an infection. So when we cut ourselves or we twist an ankle or you catch a cold or whatever it might be, your immune system is going to activate an inflammatory process to protect us and to heal us. So it has a purpose. Like inflammation is good. We need it because it's part of our healing process. So example, you might like cut your skin on something. It becomes kind of red. It becomes a little bit swollen and a little bit warm to touch. This is a sign of your immune cells flooding to that area to help fight off any like potential infections and to really help start that healing process. So signs and symptoms of acute inflammation, which is good, it's supposed to happen, right, is some redness, some heat, some swelling, a little bit of pain, sometimes a bit of loss of function because it's more stiff, right? Those are all clear signs of acute inflammation. So this is just your body actively working to repair itself, to heal. This is good, okay? So inflammation is not bad. It's when we turn into chronic inflammation. So in contrast to that short-term acute inflammation, we have now a chronic, low-grade, persistent form of inflammation. It does not go away quickly, so keep that in mind for later, right? And it's probably not going to have obvious symptoms to begin with because it's low grade. It's under the surface. You can have it for a long time and not realize it. So chronic inflammation can rise from prolonged stress. Of course, we're going to talk about cortisol. You knew this. It can be increased due to poor diet, smoking, exposure to environmental toxins. So instead of healing, it just gradually accumulates in the body and starts to harm it. So unlike acute inflammation, which is very noticeable right away, like, oh, that's red, that hurts, that's swollen, ouch, right? Like it's very obvious. With chronic inflammation, it can be really silent. Like you might not notice it at all, but over time, it can lead to symptoms like fatigue and exhaustion, joint pain, bloating, digestive issues, and even brain fog, which weirdly enough sounds a lot like menopause, right? So now, how does your body respond to inflammation? This is kind of important to understand so I can take you down this rabbit hole we're going to go down. So it all starts with that immune system recognizing that threat, whether it's, again, that infection, that injury, or damaged cells, whatever it might be, right? When the immune system detects that there is a threat, it's going to release signaling molecules called cytokines. And they are going to communicate with the white blood cells and tell them where the problem is to lead them to that area, right? They're like, hey, we got something going on over there. Go check it out. So they go and check it out. The immune cells then trigger a cascade of responses to really try and isolate and eliminate that threat. So in an acute inflammation response, for example, they'll invade attackers like bacteria and viruses and really help repair damaged tissues, which is what creates that signs of redness and the swelling and the heat that we associate with the inflammation. So again, inflammation, vital. We need it to be able to heal, right? It's how our body responds to threats. It's how we repair ourselves, but it's supposed to be short term. Problems really start to happen when inflammation becomes chronic and outlasts that protective function, right? Like there is no immediate danger anymore and it's still just inflamed. So why does this like chronic inflammation even happen? Why does it start to build up? Well, it can develop when the immune system remains in a heightened state of alert. And it's usually, almost always, due to lifestyle factors like stress that comes from, sedentary behavior, a poor diet, exposure to toxins. And then we can see like autoimmune diseases start to trigger long-term inflammation as well, and vice versa. And so we can see inflammation come from alcohol. If you're someone who's concerned with inflammation, alcohol is a big one. Caffeine can raise inflammation, which we're going to talk about in another podcast. Food molecules and intolerances, smoking, physical and emotional stress. So over-exercising, under-exercising, overeating, under-eating, a hyperactive immune system in general, toxins, the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is highly processed, right? You can have chronic infections where you're having infections all of the time, obesity, insulin resistance. We can see dyslipidemia, endothelial damage. So where like our cells are actually getting damaged, overtraining, not enough recovery, trauma, grief, right? Lack of sleep. These are all things that are going to cause inflammation. You're like, oh crap, I have quite a few things on that list. Yes, most of us do. That's why we have such an inflammatory state in where we're living, right? It's wild. So how does this impact our body? Because like acute inflammation is going to go and like attack the thing, keep you safe, heal and repair, right? In chronic inflammation, like we said, it can go unnoticed. And over time, it really begins to wear down your body's systems because it's always on. It's always trying to fight and defend you, which is exhausting, right? It is so exhausting. And it can cause lots of damage to your healthy cells and to tissues. And then it can lead to things like fatigue, like I mentioned. So ongoing inflammation, like I mentioned, drains your body's energy reserves. Like constantly trying to fight is exhausting. Like fighting with a toddler for 30 minutes, exhausting. Imagine doing that all day, every day, and like no change. Toddler is still having that tantrum. That's exhausting. That's going to lead to persistent fatigue over time. Joint pain. Chronic inflammation can absolutely affect our joints and contribute to conditions like arthritis, right? Bloating and digestive issues. Oh my goodness, does inflammation ever disrupt your gut? Like so badly. I wish more people knew this. It can lead to bloating and gas and other uncomfortable symptoms, IBS, right? And so everyone's like, well, it's just this. Well, where is that inflammation coming from? Is it the alcohol, the overeating, undereating, having the too much caffeine, the over-exercising, the lack of sleep? All of these things are causing inflammation everywhere, including your gut. But we're like, oh no, it's the gut itself. Is it? What caused this low-grade inflammation that's now manifesting in your gut? We have to go back and figure out what's the root cause. And then, of course, hormonal disruptions. So, inflammation is going to influence our hormone levels drastically. And again, this goes undetected for a long time. And all of a sudden it's like, bam, I feel like everything's falling apart. And they're like, it must be this one thing, this one event. I'm like, no, that's just the whatever they call it, the needle that broke the camel's back or whatever it was. The straw that broke the camel's back. I was thinking needle in a haystack. That's what I was thinking. Definitely not where we're going with this. But we see this inflammation is going to cause an increase in cortisol, which you're going to learn on the next episode. Whew, major issue with our fat, right? So make sure you listen to that one because that's going to tell you so much. So we're going to see cortisol go up. We're going to see estrogen decline, progesterone decline. We're going to see thyroid take a hit. All of that's going to cause metabolism to slow down. Your body sucks at burning calories, making weight loss hard and weight gain easy, right? And if we're dealing with inflammation when our hormones are already in flux in menopause, right? Of course, we're going to have a really hard time. And you're going to have way more of these symptoms. Plus, estrogen keeps inflammation down. So inflammation's already going to go up. So we got to be so much more proactive about this. And long-term inflammation is going to lead to a range of different chronic health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, even depression. And it's sometimes referred to as the quote unquote silent killer. This is because it can progress super quietly and manifest into symptoms once significant damage has happened. So then you're like, oh, I don't need to worry about that yet. Oh, I don't need to worry about that yet. I don't have to worry about that yet. But it's already happening inside your body. The heart attack that you have at 50 started at 30. The diabetes that you developed at 40 was actually happening in your 20s. It happened suddenly but slowly all at once, right? So we need to be aware of how all of this works together, right? You can't just isolate things. It happens over time. So let's talk about inflammation, hormonal changes, and menopause specifically now, because I did allude to estrogen declining, more inflammation, right? So like I said before, we have these cytokines, right? That they tell your DNA and your white blood cells to go do the thing to fight the stuff, right? So basically it's a pro-inflammatory trigger. And then the cytokine goes and delivers that message. So things that are pro-inflammatory triggers that would, make your body want to increase your immune system response and inflammation: smoking, alcohol, chemicals, stress from, overeating, undereating, lack of carbs, too much processed foods, not enough sleep, all the things that we talk about on a regular basis here. And then that leads to an overactive immune system, which produces too many white blood cells. You can also have food molecules that your body views as a threat, even though they're not. And that's going to increase your cytokines even more, leading to more inflammation, right? Telling your white blood cells to go do the thing. And that's where we can start developing a lot of food allergies and sensitivities that we didn't have before. Inflammation, you guys. So then what happens is you have these kinases that deliver the message from the cytokines to the DNA. So the cytokines are like, hey, we need to do something. There's all this inflammation happening or pro-inflammatory triggers. We need to go fight the things. The kinase then goes and delivers that message, okay? Your DNA reads it and then decides how to respond. Do we send more white blood cells? What are we gonna do? So then we have all these different pro-inflammatory kinases, which then trigger more inflammation. Okay, so then it's we have more inflammation, and then that circles back, and you have this feedback loop of oh, we have more inflammation, we need to fight it. Oh, we have more inflammation, we need to fight it. And inflammation just goes up and up and up because that's how our body fights things. Okay, so we start seeing this massive accumulation of inflammation in our body. And yes, our body needs inflammation to regenerate and repair, but not a lot. So what ends up happening is our diet and our lifestyle of poor sleep and overstressing and overactivity and undereating and the diets here and the diets there and then going back up to normal calories and then having processed foods and all the things, right? All the regular stress that we're dealing with overwhelms your body so much. So many signals of inflammation. And so then again, this cycle just continues. More inflammation, more inflammation, more inflammation, which leads to all these chronic conditions we talked about. So when we have all of these pro-inflammatory kinases now that are in our body, they can attach themselves to our cell wall and produce more cytokines. And those are called COX-2. And they go out to our body. And then there's acids in our body that attach to those COX-2 when our inflammation is high. And there are two main ones. There's arachidonic acid and linoleic acid. Okay, I'm very proud I'm able to pronounce those because usually I struggle. Because again, who names these things? I don't know. So we have one acid and two acids. Okay, so acid 1, arachidonic acid, is very pro-inflammatory. And when combined with the COX-2, is going to result in more pain, more stiffness, and poor recovery, which is what a lot of us are experiencing. It's going to create PGE2, which is a prostaglandin. You've probably heard about these a lot, and they increase inflammation, pain, more blood flow. You can have a fever. And then there's also a different prostaglandin called PGF2, and those ones actually stimulate uterine contractions. So this can help shed the uterine lining during a period or also help you during labor. So this is why some women have really bad cramps with their period, is because they have way too many prostaglandins, they have way too much inflammation in their body, making the periods worse. So by reducing inflammation, you can actually help with your symptoms a ton, okay? So, and a lot of these are dictated by what we eat, right? So we have to make sure that we are paying attention to how much omega-3s we're having and how much omega-6s we're having. So let's I'll touch on that in just a second here. The second acid is linoleic acid, and it creates PGE3, which is a less inflammatory response when it's paired with that COX2. So arachidonic acid is going to be more pro-inflammatory. Linoleic acid is less inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. So we want to, and that typically comes from omega-3s. So we want to have a bigger ratio of omega-3s than omega-6s. Omega-3s in our diets are very hard to get. Omega-6s, very easy. This is in a lot of like processed packaged foods, right? Even your health foods, like your protein bars, your protein Pop-Tarts, the protein muffins, the keto breads, the keto pastas, the low carb wraps, all those things, right? So we have to be very aware of this because our diet naturally is going to favor more of that arachidonic acid compared to the linoleic acid, okay? We want to bring that ratio down, but it takes time. Like we're talking 3 to 6 months to see improvements in the ratio between these two kinds because it takes time to filter it out of our body. Like our body has just been sending that signal over and over and over again. But we need to make sure that we are helping our lifestyle not overwhelm that pro-inflammatory signal, right? Because I said you can happen from food, but it can also happen from under eating and over exercising and not getting enough sleep. So if we can overall decrease the inflammation in our body by reducing all those triggers, it will help you immensely, immensely. So let's talk about arachidonic acid a little bit more in detail here. This is found in omega-6s, okay? So it's found in cell membranes. It serves as a precursor for a lot of those pro-inflammatory compounds that we talked about, like those prostaglandins that cause more cramping, more inflammation, more pain. Estrogen plays a role in regulating arachidonic acid, okay? It has a modulating effect on inflammation. It keeps the immune system in check so we're not seeing your body freak out as easily and being like, hey, we need to fight this. Hey, we need to fight this. Estrogen keeps that in check. It reduces the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines by influencing the pathways that metabolize and break down that arachidonic acid, okay? When our estrogen levels start to go down during perimenopause, menopause, and then postmenopause, that regulation really goes away. So it allows a massive increase in pro-inflammatory compounds, right? Like the prostaglandins, like the arachidonic acid. And it's very easy for it to start to accumulate. So this is why you're like, I didn't change anything. And now all of a sudden I'm dealing with like these aches and these pains and, you know, like I'm having weird hormonal symptoms and I can't lose weight. This is why. It leads to low-grade inflammation, even when there's no injury or infection, just because estrogen isn't there to keep things in check. So your lifestyle, you see, even though you didn't change anything, that decrease in estrogen amplifies that inflammatory response, which leads to more oxidative stress in your body. As oxidative stress starts to build up, it's going to damage cellular structures like proteins, lipids, and even DNA in your body, which is going to further your inflammation even more. So it accelerates this. So this process is particularly detrimental in tissues that are sensitive to hormonal changes like fat tissue, like muscle tissue, and the cardiovascular system. So this is where we start to see massive changes in like our blood pressure, our like blood markers, more fat gain, muscle loss. This is why. Another role that estrogen plays, right? We also start seeing a change in our fat distribution and adipose tissue inflammation in general. So we see a shift in our fat storage. Menopause often leads to changes in where fat is stored, particularly belly fat, which we've all figured out, right? And we know that fat in our belly is more metabolically active, which means it's going to release more inflammatory substances, which can make all of this worse. We know that as fat cells grow larger during menopause, they can become hypoxic, which means they're just low in oxygen, which can trigger a stress response in those cells, which then leads to more immune cells in that adipose tissue, leading to more inflammation because your body's like, oh, something bad there, we have to fight it. Immune system goes up and that just keeps happening, right? So then we see that cycle of inflammation increasing with more fat tissue as well. So this localized inflammation in our fat tissue in our belly can then spill over into our bloodstream, which contributes to whole body inflammation, which makes it way more challenging to lose weight, increasing your risk of insulin resistance, making all of this a heck of a lot harder to lose weight. Because as you'll learn in the next episode, insulin resistance actually stores fat and slows down muscle breakdown. You're going to see a higher increase in your triglycerides. Okay? Again, very, very important. Insulin resistance and blood sugar control. We know estrogen helps with insulin sensitivity. It means it helps our body respond effectively to insulin and manage our blood sugars. So as estrogen starts to go down, our insulin resistance goes up. We start to struggle with our blood sugars, which leads to more fat storage. Okay. We also know insulin resistance is associated with elevated levels of blood sugars, which can trigger an inflammatory response again. So high levels of glucose can damage your cells, increase that oxidative stress, increase fat along the belly, right? That menopause belly that everyone complains about, which is then going to lead to more inflammation, which can then make metabolic issues even harder. So your body's worse at burning calories. You're going to see cortisol go up, and it's just going to be this vicious cycle. And we know that when estrogen goes down, it doesn't take as much stress for cortisol to go up. Before, you could handle a 9 out of 10. Now estrogen goes down, you can handle a 5 out of 10. And this is where you're like, Steph, I haven't changed anything. The stress in my life has always been the same, but now I'm dealing with all this weight gain. Yes, because you aren't changing anything externally, but internally what your body can handle is a lot different. So now you're seeing this huge rise in cortisol as well, which is going to impact your blood sugars, which is going to impact belly fat accumulation, which is going to affect oxidative stress and more inflammation again. And it's all just going to get worse and worse and worse and cycle and cycle and cycle. Okay, so chronic elevation of cortisol is associated with increased inflammation. We see this all the time. It can lead to more immune dysregulation, so you get sick more often. It takes you longer to recover from illnesses. Even healing can take longer, right? Because your body is going to start overproducing pro-inflammatory cytokines. And this is particularly impactful in menopause because estrogen levels make your body a lot less resilient to inflammation. So again, when anyone tells you hormones don't matter for weight loss, yes, they freaking do, because it changes everything. So how does this affect symptoms? Like, what are you going to see? Let's tackle physical symptoms first. Persistent fatigue. So unlike occasional tiredness, chronic fatigue due to inflammation is constant. Like, it doesn't feel like it improves at rest. We're like, man, I feel like I could sleep all day and like, it doesn't matter. I'm still tired. Inflammation increases your body's energy demands so much because you are working so hard. So women will feel worn out even after a full night's sleep. And those hormonal shifts in menopause, such as that declining estrogen and progesterone, can make that fatigue even worse. So again, you didn't notice it until your hormones started to change. So it isn't like, oh, menopause started all this. No, it's exaggerated what was already happening in your body. This has been developing for years. Okay? We have joint and muscle pain. We see that joint and muscle pain, like that mimics arthritis, often results in like stiffness, especially in the morning. This can be due to declining estrogen as well, and the inflammation can make it worse, leading to even worse aches and pains. Digestive issues like bloating, gas, irregular bowel movements can all be signs of inflammation in your gut. And during menopause, with hormonal changes often affect our gut health because we have the estrobolome, which is like your gut and estrogen levels in there, and how that influences your gut microbiome is a very, very big thing. And when that's combined with inflammation, can lead to tons of gut health issues. Tons. And then we can have difficulty absorbing nutrients, and then that makes our like energy worse, and all these other things. Hormone production takes an even deeper dive. So this is why understanding these things is so important. The next thing that we can see is weight gain and bloating. Oh my goodness, unexpected weight gain, unexplained, right? Chronic inflammation is going to affect your metabolism, your body's ability to be able to burn calories. It gets slow. It gets worse, right? This is going to lead to weight gain, particularly around the belly. Then your body's response to that inflammation involves producing more cortisol, which we're already struggling with because our life is so stressful. And it's going to increase fat storage even more, especially in the belly. Then those hormonal fluctuations in menopause is going to make it even harder to get rid of, right? We're also going to see that with chronic inflammation, we're going to see more water retention, which also happens when estrogen and progesterone decline. So it feels like bloating and puffiness, especially in the hands, the feet, the legs, your face, belly as well, right? So estrogen fluctuations are going to cause similar symptoms. So combining those two, it feels like it happened out of nowhere, right? Mood and energy levels. Yes, inflammation affects these areas as well. So inflammation affects your brain's chemistry. It influences your mood. It influences your anxiety levels. And in menopause, when estrogen declines, it can also impact serotonin, your brain's feel-good chemical, which makes you more prone to mood swings, irritability, even anxiety and depression. Okay? Because all your chemicals are going to be impacted due to these changes. Chronic inflammation can amplify these mood disruptions and then make that cycle that feels really hard to break because you have more inflammation, making you feel even worse. Low estrogen, higher inflammation leads to higher cortisol levels. Higher cortisol levels are going to actually impact the neural pathways in your brain, making you more reactive, making you more anxious, making you more depressed. And then that estrogen is going to make that even worse because there's less serotonin. Then we're going to see inflammation go up even more and cortisol go up even more. And it's this vicious cycle. But everyone's like, oh no, just take this medication. And like, yes, there is a time and place for anti-anxiety meds and antidepressants, absolutely. But when's the last time your doctor asked you about your hormone levels and checked those when you complained about mood? Probably never. We see brain fog and memory issues too. Chronic inflammation is going to affect your brain's functioning. Women can feel mentally sluggish, forgetful, easily distracted, right? And hormonal changes in menopause can already reduce focus and memory, and inflammation can make those worse. And then poor sleep quality. Oh my goodness. Inflammation absolutely interferes with sleep quality. And so does like disrupting hormones like cortisol. If cortisol is really high, we're going to see that our melatonin goes down. If melatonin is low, it's harder to fall asleep, harder to stay asleep, right? We see that we're waking up at nighttime if cortisol is high. We start having hot flashes and night sweats, making sleep even more challenging. And when we're not sleeping, it's hard to build muscle mass. Your cortisol is going to be higher. You're going to have higher blood sugars if you're sleeping poorly, which is going to make your body store fat, which you'll learn more about on the next episode. So again, inflammation makes all of this worse. Then we have skin changes. You can have skin redness and puffiness from that inflammation. You can have increased sensitivity, so your skin might become more reactive and more sensitive to products that you never used to before. And it can actually weaken your skin's barrier, making you more vulnerable to irritants, and hormonal changes can actually make that worse, along with inflammation. Immunity and illness, I talked about this a lot, right? Chronic inflammation weakens your immune system. It makes you more likely to have more infections, more colds, prolonged recovery. You're going to get sick way more often. And slow healing, like bruises take longer to heal, cuts take longer to heal. Your body is just so overwhelmed with inflammation that it just like, you're tying that all in with all your hormonal imbalances too. Like it makes just being healthy harder. So a key takeaway for this part is estrogen's decline during menopause removes a natural anti-inflammatory influence, allowing pro-inflammatory influences to become more active and really accumulate in our body, which is going to affect so many areas, right? So together, those two, it's hard. So we have to be mindful about how are we going to reduce this inflammation, support our estrogen levels, decline our insulin resistance, become more insulin sensitive, right? And bring those cortisol levels down, because that's going to be key here. Absolutely key. So number one, what can you do? Anti-inflammatory diet. We're focusing on whole foods, a diet rich in whole unprocessed foods, things without a label. We're talking veggies, fruits, lean proteins, potatoes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, all those things. Trying to really emphasize omega-3s. Highly recommend you supplement with omega-3 because it is hard to get in our diet naturally to really support that anti-inflammatory response. Okay. We want to reduce sugar and highly processed foods. So this isn't reducing carbs. Okay. We want our potatoes. We want our rice. We want our oats, our fruits, right? Potatoes, all those things are very important. Beans. We want to avoid the highly processed packaged foods because those are going to increase our blood sugars and increase our inflammation and increase our cortisol. Okay. So not having white bread or like the little gummy fruit snacks, right? Instead, aim for complex carbs like quinoa and potatoes and oats, fruit, right? You can include some anti-inflammatory herbs like turmeric is amazing, ginger, boswellia, which is like frankincense, and magnesium. Those are incredible for you. So turmeric is an active compound shown to reduce inflammation by decreasing the production of prostaglandins and other inflammatory compounds. So those are the ones that increase the cramping, the pain, the inflammation that we talked about. Ginger is known for its anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties, which again can reduce those prostaglandin levels, which are really helpful, especially if you're someone who struggles with cramps. So drinking a ginger tea can be really beneficial here. Boswellia or frankincense, the herb is anti-inflammatory, helps reduce the building of those pro-inflammatory compounds like prostaglandins again. And then magnesium is amazing. It's a full body relaxation type of supplement. It is amazing. It's hard to get in all of our foods. It is found in like leafy greens, nuts, and seeds. But honestly, take 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate before bed. It will make a massive difference for you, improving your sleep, decreasing inflammation, among other things. Like magnesium is something I recommend all women take, especially because magnesium helps lower cortisol, but if cortisol is high, it depletes you of magnesium. So having more magnesium will help you with this. Another thing for food is including phytoestrogens. Foods rich in phytoestrogens like flax seeds and soy products and chickpeas can actually mimic estrogen and balance hormones. So if you have estrogen dominance, it will actually help block receptors so that estrogen can attach to it to help bring estrogen levels down. If you have not enough estrogen, it will act like estrogen and attach to receptors to bring estrogen levels higher. Amazing. And it has also anti-inflammatory effects. And then fiber. Fiber comes from carbs, everybody. Fiber-rich foods help support your gut health, which is essential for managing your inflammation. It can help balance your blood sugars, prevent insulin spikes, and there are so many great sources of fibers like chia seeds and legumes and whole grains. Whole grains, that means carbs, you guys. Have your carbs. So that's making sure that you're focusing on an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, number 2 is mindful movement. So regular, moderate exercise. It helps reduce inflammation, improve your hormonal balance, especially during perimenopause. Focus on moderate, consistent activities like, just going for a brisk walk and doing resistance training. Yoga can be great too. Okay. We want to make sure that we are doing resistance training where you are lifting heavy. You are pushing yourself to try and get stronger every single week. You're following the same program for 4 to 6 weeks. Every Monday looks the same. Every Wednesday looks the same. Every Friday looks the same to really stimulate muscle growth, because a muscle will help improve your insulin sensitivity, which will then help bring down inflammation, which is really important, and also boost metabolism, which means your body's better at burning calories, which means it's easier to lose weight. Number 3, managing stress levels. This is massive, you guys. Practice stress relieving techniques to help bring your heart rate down, bring your breathing rate down. So this can be meditation, journaling, deep breathing, mindfulness, whatever that looks like. The other thing that's really important for managing stress levels is eating enough food. Under eating is a stress on your body. Not having enough carbs increases cortisol as well. So you need to eat enough food, eat enough carbs, and eat consistently so you're not up and down, causing more stress on your body. The next one is prioritizing sleep. Sleep is massive. If we are not getting enough sleep, we are going to be more inflamed. We are going to see cortisol be higher. We're going to see our blood sugars spike. All these things are going to lead to fat storage and worse hormonal symptoms and worse hormonal balance. And all that's going to make it really hard to lose weight because your metabolism is going to slow down. So make sure that you are creating a good sleep routine, trying to avoid screens, keep a dark room, have some white noise in the background. These are all things that can help so much. We do a bedtime snack with our clients. So like an hour before bed, 45 minutes before bed, you have a snack that has carbs and then protein or fat with it. Because what this does is the carbohydrates bring cortisol down. It brings melatonin up, your sleepy hormone, so you are able to fall asleep easier. Then having the protein or fat with that carbohydrate helps stabilize those blood sugars through the night so that you're not seeing a blood sugar spike and drop, because that drop in blood sugar will spike your cortisol, because that's what's going to trigger more blood sugar to increase, but that's going to wake you up. So having that bedtime snack can make a massive improvement for blood sugar control, for better sleep, for cortisol, for melatonin, which are all going to help you with weight management and inflammation. Number 5 is supporting your gut health. So incorporating probiotic foods is massive. So fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi are all really great to help you support decreasing your inflammatory response. And good gut health is going to promote a balanced hormone profile in your body as well. by aiding in nutrient absorption, supporting immune function, and bringing down inflammation. You also want to eat prebiotic foods, and these come from carbohydrates, things like garlic, onion, banana, asparagus, whole grains, which can all help reduce inflammation. So together you want pre and probiotics to help balance that gut, to help bring inflammation down and support your hormone health altogether. Staying hydrated. This one's very interesting for a lot of people. Drink plenty of water. Dehydration makes inflammation worse. It can increase your pain. It can increase your bloating. That doesn't feel good. So make sure you're having enough water in your diet. You take your body weight in pounds, divide it by 2. That's how many ounces you should be drinking every day. Having things like herbal teas like ginger is really helpful as well because they have anti-inflammatory properties. And again, that just helps give you an extra added boost for reducing inflammation while also staying hydrated. And again, limit your alcohol and caffeine. Alcohol and caffeine can both increase inflammation and interfere with hormone balance, which can potentially lead to higher prostaglandin levels, those pro-inflammatory compounds. So reducing or moderating your intake to those substances can really help improve the inflammation levels overall. And then number 7, you need to monitor and adjust small steps. Track symptoms, notice patterns, keep a journal so you can keep track of what's your fatigue, like your energy levels, your digestion, your mood, your sleep, because all those things are going to tell you a lot about blood sugar, a lot about stress, a lot about inflammation. So then if you can identify the triggers or things that are working well, then you can replicate them or avoid them, right? And you want to introduce changes gradually, because if you change everything at once, you have no idea what's working for you, right? And small changes over time build massive momentum. So just like having cake every day is probably going to add up in the long run to not something you want long term, right? So is like all these little mindful things that we don't think about. So make sure that you are staying consistent. You need to acknowledge that reducing inflammation can take 3 to 6 months, right? It takes a long time and consistent effort. So be gracious with yourself, like give yourself grace, but it's going to take time and you have to be open-minded. Like it's not going to happen overnight. Listen to your body. This is a great time to become more self-aware as to like what's actually like influencing your body, right? Like what makes you feel better, what makes you feel worse. And then you want to create those like habits that you can have for the rest of your life. This is what we manage with like our clients all the time is we need to implement things that you're going to do forever because you can't expect to like get better and then go back to what you were doing before that got you to where you didn't want to be, right? So there has to be a way to maintain that as well. So I want you to realize that estrogen and like inflammation go hand in hand together, and you feel like it's because the estrogen declined, and it's like, no, it just sped up what was already happening there, that was already going on under the surface. So we need to make sure that we're eating enough food. If you need help calculating that, we have an assessment that's in the show notes for you, or you can book a consultation call. You need to be eating enough carbohydrates, enough protein, make sure you're eating in the right order, the right, like timing as well, which I'm going to talk about more on the next podcast. Make sure you're getting enough whole foods, limiting highly processed foods. That includes your protein bars and your keto breads and the keto wraps, right? Those all have highly processed ingredients. Doing your resistance training, doing your walking, managing your stress levels, prioritizing your sleep, focusing on things that are going to improve your gut health. Stay hydrated. And then baby steps over time. And again, if you need help figuring out where to start, just fill out that assessment or book a consultation call. We will help you figure out what steps are best for you, what that journey looks like. It's absolutely free. If you guys need anything at all, please let me know. Make sure to subscribe, share with your friends that are struggling with inflammation so they understand why this is happening, as well as the steps to improve it. I'm going to make a guide for this that's going to be housed in our Facebook community with all the steps a little bit more outlined and kind of a step-by-step process to follow it on your own. So make sure to check that out as well. I love you so much and have a good rest of your day. Bye.